Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. In today's video, we're going to be going over Smash Factor X, which was not only the first major of the new ranking season, but also the first major that Mexico has had all year. And at that, a super major. This event is insanely stacked because you have a bunch of invaders coming down. For our top 16 seeds, you're going to have Shiny Mark, Siski, MK Big Boss, and Cosmos in 13th, Mudace, T, Skyjay, and Meister in 9th, Glutiny and Kameme in 7th, Shootone and Leo in 5th, Tweak in 4th, Zomba in 3rd, Sonics in 2nd, and our first seed is Spargo. So before we look at the top 16 itself, to get into the top 16, the bracket is divided in two, and we're going to be taking a look at both parts of that bracket. And unfortunately, I don't know the Mexican scene as well as I know the Japanese scene or the American scene, but I will be doing my best. And a Mexican player that I want to highlight right off the bat is going to be Rox. We saw his performance at Gauntlet. It was very good. He ended up getting a 25th place while losing to Tweak in the winner's side of bracket. Game 5, by the way, like, that's kind of just a bad draw straight up. Now, Skyjay versus Rox, I would actually favor Rox here. He has a pretty good record versus Skyjay, as well as Sheik being able to absolutely overwhelm Incineroar. Now, it's kind of a tricky matchup because while Sheik definitely runs over Incineroar, he only needs to hit her like literally 2 times, if even, and he's going to be stealing the stock. So it's a really stressful game for Sheik, but Rox is a player that can operate on those high levels of stress and get that upset. And then versus MK Leo, I think Sheik does decent versus Leo's characters, but it is still going to be against MK Leo. So I don't know if I would favor Rox in that situation. Not impossible, though. Again, he is a caliber player that can beat some of the best of the best. As I said earlier, he took Tweak to Game 5, was very close to taking that set, and MK Leo hasn't been performing as well as Tweak has, so I think Rox is a player we could definitely see making some of the bigger upsets at this tournament. For context, the last Smash Factor, he was able to beat Sonic, so he's going to be coming into this one hopefully hot. Also, for those who are curious on Skyjay's record versus Rox, Rox is going to be winning the last 2 encounters, but to be fair, they haven't played in over a year, and Skyjay has become a top 30 player in the world in that time. But also, for Rox's credit, he could be that good too, and we just don't really know because he hasn't been going to any events, and his regional performances, as you can see, are pretty spectacular as well. So even though Skyjay has obviously leveled up massively in the last year, I would still favor Rox. I also want to talk about one of the invaders that I think will be able to make top 16 that isn't projected to. In this part of the bracket, we're going to have Leon, we're going to have Shattuck, Naito, Andres FN, and Ling. And my choice is going to be Andres FN. And it isn't even because his bracket is particularly good. To be fair, none of the invaders have good brackets. Like MK Leo's going up against Leon, Shattuck's going up against Shiny Mark. You have Ling going up against Meister. His worst matchup, like, this is probably going to be DDD Game & Watch. And for Andres FN, he also doesn't have a great bracket. He is going to be going into Kameme and then going into Meister. 2 very tough matchups. But to be fair, Kameme did just get 17th at Gommel. Maybe Andres FN is going to be coming in with a little bit of confidence. Now, Kameme also lost to Zomba and Riddles at the event, so did he really get 17th? But in terms of placement, Andres FN's like, hey, this guy's washed. He can't even get top 16 at a major. This is a free win, and if he's able to take that bite set, I do genuinely believe that Andres FN is the caliber of player to be able to beat someone like Kameme, like Meister. I think Meister is going to be a lot harder, though, just because I think Game & Watch absolutely throttles like all FGC characters. And the loser side of bracket, I also think it's fairly doable for Andres FN. I think he can beat both Ling and Skyjay, but the loser side, it can be a little bit fickle, so we're not going to talk about that as much. But just in general, I think Andres FN is a really strong player. I really like how many characters he's using. He's kind of juggling between all the FGC characters. I feel like more recently, I've been seeing a lot of Terry, but that could just be because I'm catching certain sets and I'm missing sets where he's playing a lot of Kazuya, where he's playing a lot of Ken and Ryu. But regardless, all 4 of those characters are insanely broken. And to be honest, Andres FN is probably the best FGC player in the world, just in terms of him playing all the characters. Like, the only person that does that at the top level is going to be Riddles now, because he just started adding Ken to his roster. So it's pretty crazy how many characters Andres can play at the top level, even if they are similar like the FGCs, and it gives him a lot of value in the bracket. Now let's talk about these top 16 qualifiers, and we're not going to really touch on the loser side ones because, again, the losers bracket is so fickle. But if there's a player that you want me to look at and we haven't really talked about their run, please let me know down below. But for the winner side, you're going to have MK Leo versus Skyjay, and I would heavy favor Leo there, especially after their set at Battle of BC. For Tweak Siski, I'm a little bit less certain about this one. I'd probably say like 60% Tweak, 40% Siski. Siski has been really impressive as of late. He's been doing super well whenever he has been going to major events, so I think he could definitely get that upset over Tweak, but of course, I would still favor Tweak. Then you have Kameme versus Meister. Now, I would favor Kameme here, but to be fair, Meister has a very good sword. He's going to know the ins and outs of this character at least a lot more than other people do, so hopefully he'll be able to use that matchup knowledge and be able to get an upset for him, but I would still be going towards Kameme there. Spargo Shiny Mark, though, I think if there was an upset to happen at any point in the bracket that we've covered so far, it would be right here, because he's playing Cloud, he's playing Aegis, and Shining Marks on Pikachu. Those are characters that get absolutely bullied off stage. And if you watch the Gauntlet Grand Finals, the way that Sonic was able to beat Spargo in a matchup that Sonic is supposed to lose, by the way, is that he just relentlessly edgeguarded the Aegis over and over and over again. And Sonic has the best edgeguarding in the world. It's not really close right now, but if there's anyone that would be able to do it like he would, it would be Shining Mark. Because not only does Pikachu give Shining Mark the tools to be able to edgeguard, but also this guy is insanely talented, and it's one of the reasons that he is the best Pikachu in the world right now. So I definitely think that is a possible upset, but to be fair, it is still Spargo. You're still betting on someone that a lot of people are regarding as the best player in the world right now, so it's not super free for Shining Mark, but I definitely believe he can get that upset. Also, this isn't a segment or related to anything. I just wanted to give a shout out to Joker because I think he is an insanely good player that a lot of people don't know about, so hopefully he pops off at this tournament. On to the next half of the bracket. The first two players I want to look at is going to be Alendis and Waka. And the reason I'm grouping them together is, for me, at least in my mind, there's going to be three big players from Mexico that could cause some serious damage in the seed if they start going this stuff. And that's going to be Alendis, Waka, and Rox. And there's a bunch of other players that, of course, could. But those are the three that are going to be standing out to me the most. And Alendis is a player that I unironically think if he went to more stuff, he'd be in contention for the best Snake in the world. He is incredible. You watch some of his gameplay, he just does some unreal stuff, and he's going up against T, who has been doing the worst he's ever done in Smash Ultimate. Now, it is still T, but I think Alan just has a chance to be able to get that upset here and to be able to perform at this tournament. And if he does well enough, I think more people will start regarding him as a player that is super lethal, that could potentially be the best Snake in the world. And that's a really hard title to take right now because you have Apollo Kage, you have Hurt, you have Dio, you have MVD, you have so many people who are in contention for it. And I feel like Alan is a name that really doesn't get thrown in there enough. So depending on how he performs at this tournament, I think there could be a new Snake player that is added to everyone's radar. Same thing for Luigi as well with Waka. You're talking about Luigi, you're talking about Yamanakshin, Gaga. There's a lot of very good Luigis out there. Waka's name does not get thrown in the discussion nearly enough. And for me, he's the second best Luigi. I'd still give the best Luigi to Luigi, but Waka does some incredible stuff. He's taken sets over players like Spargo. He is going up against Mutes, who is a very upsettable player, but also if Mutes is playing at his peak, then it's like the opposite of being able to upset. It's kind of just a coin flip there, but I think Waka can get a win over Mutes. I think Alendis can get a win over T. I think both these guys can get into the top 16. Again, Alendis over Mutes in the loser side, Waka over T in the winner side, kind of just the reverse points I've already had. T and Mutes are players that have been susceptible to being upset this year, and I just have a lot of faith in these two players in general, so I'm hoping to see at least one of them pop off. And even though we have a ton of top Mexican talent coming to this event that doesn't go to any other events, it's kind of the only time we get to see them. Players like Leaf, players like Nair, players like May, Javi. These are some amazing talent that don't really travel too much. They aren't the players that I'm the most excited for. What I'm excited for is Cosmos, because he has announced that he's going to be dropping Aegis. He's not picking up Joker, but he's going to Inkling main and Corrin secondary. Now, is this choice going to work? I have no idea. I believe in Cosmos. I will always believe in him. He's had so much success throughout the history of this game with a multitude of different characters. And Inkling is a character that is still doing okay in the current meta. You still have Shiryuki getting results. Showers is a player that's recently been doing really well. I think Cosmos can definitely bring Inkling back and have success with them. But I don't know if it's going to be immediate. He might do really poorly at Smash Factor, but he also might farm super hard at this event. You know, he's got a new character. He's got a new mindset. It's a new season. Cosmos could be going into this event absolutely fresh, playing full of momentum, full of confidence, and I think he could really go far, but it could also be the opposite of he's playing Inkling in 2023 and it doesn't go super well, so I'm very curious to see how Cosmos does in this bracket. Hoping for the best, though. And in terms of invaders that aren't seeded for top 16 that I think have the potential to, you're going to have Base Mage, Marvelous Marco, and Mr. R being our main candidates. And if I had to pick one, I would definitely go with Mr. R. He is going to go against MK Big Boss in the losers bracket, which I would favor him in because I just think Sheik does very well versus Rob in general. You're also going to have Mr. R going against Cosmos in the winner side. We already talked about that. Cosmos is kind of an X factor this tournament. We really don't know how he's going to do. And then he would go potentially into Zomba. Now, I wouldn't favor him versus Zomba, but again, I think Sheik does very well versus Rob, but it is still Zomba playing at his end game. But Mr. R looked phenomenal at Gauntlet. He had a really nice run there, getting 13th. Was able to capitalize on a couple of good wins. This is kind of the first time that we've seen him do super well when he's traveling. He didn't do super great in Japan. He didn't have an amazing performance at Battle BC, but he seemed really in form at Gauntlet. I think if he's able to play like that at Smash Factor, we could definitely see him getting a couple upsets and sneaking his way into the top 16, maybe even the top 8. And before we move on to the top 16, we of course got to talk about some potential upsets. And to be honest, the only one I could really see happening would be T over Gluttony. Sonics, even though he did lose the last time he played NK Big Boss at Let's Make Big Moves, I mean, I saw the way that guy was playing at Gommel. He looked absolutely incredible. Like, MK Big Boss is going to have to be playing the best Smash of his life to be able to beat Sonics, which, to be fair, isn't impossible. If MK Big Boss is on his game, he can beat Sonics, but he's going to need to put in some insane work. Now, Gluttony T, this is an interesting one because Gluttony has been doing amazing as late. It seems like he's reclaimed his title as the best player in Europe, and T hasn't been doing as great, but T also has a 5-0 record versus Gluttony. So I don't really know how this is going to unfold. I'm actually going to go with Gluttony here despite the record just because I have been so impressed by his plays late, especially his bike usage. I mean, he has literally made Wario like 20 times better with just one move. It's actually insane. So I'm going to guess with Gluttony there finally getting his first win over T. Then you have Zomba Cosmos, kind of already talked about that, but I would favor Zomba there. But to be fair, Cosmos has a pretty good record versus Zomba, so maybe he just has the habits down and he can use his new characters to be able to get that nice win. And then for Shuton Mudes, I would definitely go with Shuton here. He has a 3-0 record versus Mudes. I think Aegis does very well versus Peach in general. He was also able to beat him recently at Battle of BC, so I'm going to guess Shuton there. The only upset that I would even expect to happen would be T over Gluttony, but I'm going to say that Gluttony takes it regardless. On to the top 16 for our losers round 1. You're going to have Shining Mark versus Meister as our first matchup, and I would definitely favor Meister here. Game & Watch Pikachu is a really bad matchup, just kind of an unlucky draw for Shining Mark. Now, to be fair, Shining Mark does have a prominent Lucina secondary. It's used for characters like Game & Watch, characters like Ness, so it is prepared for this type of matchup if he even brings it up, because I believe the last time they played in bracket, Shining Mark just stuck it out with Pikachu stuck with the main, which I actually do like. When you are less comfortable in a bracket, you're playing against a player that has a lot more experience than you. I think sticking to your mains is probably your best bet, so I would expect Meister to win this versus both the Pikachu and the Lucina, to be honest. Though Shining Mark is a player that is still incredible, I have a lot of faith in him in general, if you couldn't tell already by watching this channel, so I'm not going to completely count him out, but my chips would be on Meister there. Then you have Siski versus Skyjay. Now, I'm going to go with Siski just because Samus and Sonora sounds like one of the most unfun matchups in the entire game. For Incineroar, that is. Now, to Skyjay's credit, they don't make Incineroars like they make him in Europe. Now, to be fair, they don't make Incineroars like they make him anywhere else in the world, but even with that knowledge, I would still favor Siski just because that matchup is so bad. Then you have T versus MK Big Boss. Now, I would favor T here, but this wouldn't be the first time that MK Big Boss surprised me. He has some of the most random, insane wins in Smash Ultimate, like that Sonics win that he got at Let's Make Big Moves. I think T is a player that he can beat, but a majority of the time, I would expect T to take that. Then you have Mudes versus Cosmos. Now, I'm definitely going to favor Mudes here just because they played recently. Mudes was able to reverse 3-0 Cosmos, and that was when Cosmos was on the Aegis, which is a pretty rough match for Peach. I think if Cosmos goes in, I would expect him to probably play Corrin. Maybe he plays Inkling. I don't really know how good that matchup is, but regardless of the character choice, I would still expect Mudes to come out on top, especially if he's made it this far in the bracket. And here we have the winner's quarters. Our first matchup is Spargo and Kameme, which we were supposed to have at Gommel, but because of Zomba, it did not happen. Zomba also beat Spargo there as well, so shout out to him for beating both of those players, but I would favor Spargo here as I did last time, but I have to make the point that Kameme has a prominent secondary Sheik versus Spargo's Cloud. Spargo dropped a set to Void earlier on in the year. It could be Cloud's worst matchup, honestly. Sheik Cloud's a really tough one, so I wouldn't be super surprised if we saw Aegis come out in this match, and then I wouldn't be super surprised if he switched off Sheik to go into Sora Aegis. I think this could be an absolute counterpick war, which are my favorite types of matchups, so I'm really excited for it. I would still favor Spargo. Kameme definitely has the character pool and the talent to be able to take him out, though. Then you have Tweak versus MK Leo. Now, this is the first time in Ultimate history that these guys are going to play each other outside of the top 8, excluding Summit events, because they play each other outside of top 8 at Summit like 60 different times. I don't know why it's happened so many times at Summit, but regardless of that, this is a pretty big deal, and I would still favor Tweak here because he's been winning all the recent encounters as well as the matchup spread just being in his favor, but this is MK Leo on the home turf. He's the defending Smash Factor champ as well, so I am expecting him to be playing with 100% this weekend. Even with that, I would still favor Tweak, but MK Leo, I think he's going to be on a heater, so maybe not as easy as I think. Then you have Sonics versus Gluttony. Now, I'm going to go with Sonics here because he has a really, really good matchup versus Wario, as well as him winning all the recent encounters. But Gluttony has been cooking recently in the lab with the bike, as I kind of touched on earlier. And I think that's going to be really important in the Sonic matchup. So if Gluttony was able to beat Sonics, this would definitely be the time to do it. But I would still favor Sonics here, especially after his performance at Gommel. And then finally, you're going to have Zomba versus Shuton. And Zomba, as some of you guys may forget, is the Japanese Slayer. He's not only the best player in America, he's also the Japanese Slayer. And I'm going to say that he's able to take that win over Shuton this time. Now, these are players, they've traded sets back and forth, but the way that Zomba's been playing as of late, I'm going to go with him. Also, in case people were curious about the record for Zomba Shuton, they haven't really been trading sets per se, but you do have Zomba winning that last encounter, which gives me more confidence in my pick. And now we have losers round two. The only upsets that we projected to happen are going to be Siski over Skyjay. So for Shutone Meister as our first matchup, I would expect Shutone to win this one. He doesn't have the winning head-to-head versus Meister overall, but the last time they played and the only recent time they played was at Battle of BC where Shutone was able to take it. He's also going to be playing Aegis versus Game Watch. He also has wins over Mia. I just kind of favor him in really every area here. He's able to switch to Olimar as well. He's not feeling great about the Aegis Meister. He's kind of stuck on Game Watch. He could potentially go Sora, but if he went Sora, I would expect Shutone to beat him even harder, to be honest. So I think Shutone's definitely going to take that one. Then you have Glutzy versus Sissy. Now, I'd say like 90% of the time, Glutony wins this. There is a 10% though where Siski wins it, but I don't think it's going to be at that tournament. I've already mentioned it like twice in the video probably, but Glutony has just looked insanely impressive as of late, and I would expect him over Siski. Then you would have MK Leo versus T. Now, Leo has never lost to T in the entirety of Smash Ultimate. At least I'm pretty sure that's true, and I don't expect it to happen at this tournament, but to T's credit, if there was a time where you were going to upset MK Leo, it would be right now. But just because the record is so far in his favor, I'm going to expect Leo to take it. They haven't played in a long time, though, so I'm very curious to see how it actually unfolds. And our final Losers 2 matchup is going to be Kameme versus Mutes. And I'm going to go with Mutes here just because first time they played was at Battle of BC, or at least the first time they played recently was at Battle of BC, and Mutes was able to take it. I think beating Kameme the first time is the hardest time to beat him because you are playing against such a different level Sora, and Kameme wasn't able to deal with Mutes the first time. I'm sure he's been putting in work in the matchup, but now Mutes is only going to have more information against him. He clearly knows how to deal with the Sora, which is one of the biggest problems against going against Kameme. Maybe Kameme brings out the Mega Man or the Sheik. I don't think those are impossibilities either, but regardless of what character it is, I think Mutes will pull through. Our first matchup of winter semis is going to be Spargo versus Tweak. Now, this is a matchup that hasn't happened since Collision, and every single time that these players are projected to meet each other in bracket, I've gone with Tweak. If you've been watching these videos, it's been Tweak like every single time for the past handful of months, and I'm not going to change that this time because if this is the first time that Spargo and Tweak meet up in months, again, they haven't played since Collision, and I pick Spargo and Tweak wins, I will never be able to forgive myself. So I'm going to be picking Tweak there, and for Sonic's Zomba, I talked about this in the Gomo video as well. Zomba can beat Sonics, but he has to be playing at 100,000% because that matchup is god-awful. And I would favor Sonics, like, not 90% of the time. I'll say, like, 70% of the time, 30% of the time, it's Zomba. Actually, I'll say 80-20, just especially considering how well Sonic was playing at Gommel. So not only can Sonics not be playing the best of the best, but Zomba has to be playing the best of the best because the matchup is stacked against him, and Sonics is crazy. In loser 7th, our first matchup is Shutone Glutony, and I'm definitely going to go with Shutone here. He just has the record overall. I think it's like 9-1 or something crazy in his favor, and most of those wins are going to be with Olimar as well. When Shutone has a really positive record versus someone with Olimar, it only gives me more confidence because the Aegis doesn't even have to come out. Now, to be fair, these guys haven't played each other a ton pre-quarantine. They've only played each other a total of 3 times, and the last time that they played each other pre-quarantine, or just in general, I guess, was at the Scuff World Tour, but also all 3 of those sets went to Shutone's favor. None of them even went to Game 5, so I'm definitely going to expect Shutone to pull this one out, though Glutzy's Bike Tech, it's definitely not impossible. But then you have MK Leo versus Mutes, and last time these two played was at Genesis, and I expect it to go the same way of MK Leo taking the set. I just think that his Joker does very well versus Mutes just because Mutes loves playing outside of your burst range. The reason that Mutes is the best Peach, by the way, is because his movement is by far the best out of all the Peach players, and he's able to whiff punish you extremely well. Joker is a character that says, yeah, that's really great that you're whiff punishing me and you're staying outside of my burst range. I have gun. You can't punish this. Even if you're as far away as you can, you're halfway across the stage now, and I'm probably still going to be getting chip damage anyway. Plus, you have other sword characters that just have a long range that don't reward Peach as much for floating outside of it, so I'm going to expect Leo to win that one. But also, Mutes beat Leo in the Winners Finals of Genesis, so it's not impossible that he's actually able to take this set. In losers quarters, our first matchup is going to be Spargo versus Shutone. Now, they have a 1-1 record pre-quarantine, and both sets were at LSI, so I don't even know what to think of that, honestly. They're trading sets there. And on paper, I would favor Spargo here, because it's not going to be an Aegis title just because I think Shutone's Aegis is better than Spargo's. It's probably going to be Aegis versus Cloud. I can't imagine that Shutone goes Olimar because Olimar gets absolutely throttled by Cloud, and I would favor Spargo in that matchup just because even though I think Shutone's Aegis is better, Spargo's Aegis is still amazing, and he's very good against the character. So I imagine that Spargo comes out on top there. Then you have Zomba versus MKLeo. Now Zomba, he won their last 2 encounters, and I would expect him to win this one, honestly. MK Big Boss, MKLeo, they are training partners, and I think in this one scenario, it is to the detriment because he's so used to a different playstyle of Rob. Maybe in this scenario, MK Big Boss would jump and Zomba would roll. It's just the little things like that that can super throw you off in a match, and especially when you're playing against a player of the caliber of Zomba who's going to absolutely explode you for missing just one interaction. I think Zomba's favored there, though I'm sure Leo has been working very hard to ensure that he isn't losing to Zomba, but if he's working very hard by practicing against MK Big Boss, he's going to be running into the same issues he ran into the last 2 times. And here we are, the top 4. We have Sonics and Tweak in the winner side, and Zomba and Spargo in the loser side. And for Sonics Tweak, I would expect Sonics to take this one, just because I think a can of worms has been opened, to be honest. After Sonics won Gommel, I think he's probably going to be the best player in the world. Maybe Akala can stop him, but if he was playing like he was Gommel, if he was playing even like 80% the way he's playing in Gommel, he will be beating Tweak. Now, the record is 4-2 in Tweak's favor. They haven't played in over a year, and Sonics did win their last encounter, so those are the stats. They don't really mean anything, to be honest, because it has been so long since they played, but Tweak is a player that does have a pretty decent amount of success versus Sonic. I think Diddy Kong does well enough in the matchup where Tweak can definitely win it, but the way that Sonic was playing at Gommel, I think if he's playing even close to that, he is going to be in the grand finals of this tournament. And for Zomba versus Spargo, I would expect Spargo to take it. Now, both the players did trade sets at Gommel, but Aegis does this so incredibly well versus Rob. And to be fair, Zomba is very good versus Aegis, but just because you are good against the character, does that mean that you can overcome a -2 or -1 matchup, however bad it is, every single time? So I'm going to guess that Spargo wins that one. In losers finals, we get our rematch of Tweak versus Spargo, and I'll say that Spargo takes it this time because I honestly believe it doesn't matter who wins this losers finals set. I think Sonics is going to win this event. The way he deconstructed Spargo's Aegis at Gommel was so impressive to me. That is supposed to be the answer to Sonic, and he made that matchup look like -2. His conversions off stage were simply unreal. Sonics is so good at taking apart his bad matchups, and for his good matchups, he's playing Sonic, so he doesn't even have to worry about it. He is such a scary player right now, and I genuinely mean this when I believe he can become the best player in the world. If he's playing like he was at Gommel, I have 100% expect him to win Smash Factor X, and honestly, it's getting to a point, even though Sonics has just won one tournament, where I'm looking at brackets and I'm saying, who can beat Sonics? I think Spargo has a chance against Sonics, I think Leo has a chance, I think Tweak has a chance, I think Shutone has a chance. I wouldn't favor any of them. The only player in the entire world who I would favor versus Sonics is Light, and since he's not here, I think that Sonics is going to win Smash Factor X, and I thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If there's a player that I left out at any point in this video, and I'm sure there did because the tournament is absolutely massive, please just let me know down below. The sport has been absolutely unreal. Thank you guys for everything. Be sure to sub and all that yada yada, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye-bye!